Today we are going to speak about Jacques Derrida, a French philosopher, and especially we'll be discussing structure, sign, and play in the human sciences. Jacques Derrida taught philosophy at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris, that is the institutions where he taught philosophy. However, he has had more influence in literary studies than on philosophy, especially in the University of America, where the school of deconstructive criticism was drawing much of its inspiration from Jacques Derrida. Structure, sign, and play in the human sciences belongs to historic moment, the traffic of ideas between Europe and America. It was originally a paper. It was originally a research paper contributed to a conference entitled The Language of Criticism and the Science of Man, held at Johns Hopkins University, Baltimore in the year 1966, at which the American academic world experienced at first hand the challenges of new ideas and methodologies, the humanities generated by European structuralism. Structure, sign, and play marks the moment which post structuralism's movement begins, opposing itself to classical structuralism based on Saussure's linguistics, held out the hope of achieving scientific account of culture by identifying the system that underlies the infinite manifestations of any form of cultural production. The structural anthropology of Claude Lévi-Strauss tried to do this for myth, but Derrida says all such analysis imply that they are based on some secure ground, a center, or transcendental signified, that is outside the system under investigation and guarantees its intelligibility. Derrida says there is no such secure ground. This is the counter argument against Saussure and Claude Lévi-Strauss. Derrida says there is no such secure ground. It is a philosophical fiction. Derrida fathered a new school of criticism based on this deconstruction. He is known for deconstruction, taking its cue from Derrida's assertion on structure, sign, and play that language bears within itself the necessity of its own critique. Deconstructive criticism aims to show that any text inevitably undermines its own claim to have determinate, that is, definitive, final meaning, and licenses the reader to produce his own meaning out of it by activity of semantic free play. Semantic free play, as far as the meaning is concerned, semantic free play. So, this is just like we saw in Roland Barthes' Death of the Author. Roland Barthes also making the same claim that the text has infinite capacity to produce infinite number of meanings. Derrida also in Structure, Sign, and Play making the same claim. Derrida has written extensively. I have simply mentioned some of his works only. The most important works that I think are important as far as literature and interpretation are concerned are of grammatology, writing and difference. Writing and difference is the collection of essays from which we have taken from which we have the essay structure, sign, and play in the discourse of human sciences. Next is margin of philosophy, And the last one, which I have mentioned here, dissemination. It doesn't mean that he wrote only these books. As I said, he wrote extensively, and we get to know his philosophy towards everything if we go through all his works. But his, as far as interpretation and literature are concerned, I think the works that I have mentioned, like of grammatology, writing and reference, speech of phenomenon, margin of philosophy, and dissemination, these are enough for our understanding. So we try to understand each word that he used in the title of the essay, structure, sign, and play. We need to understand each and everything. All these important ideas that are part of the title of his essay, we need to understand in order to have holistic understanding of the essay itself. We talked about structure when we discussed language as the system of signs, SIGNS. So the structure of the system we know already, but here we try to understand what exactly he mean by structure. We understood the structure of sign system in Ferdinand de Saussure's idea of language as the system of sign, language as the system of sign. For Derrida, structure is any organized system of thought like philosophy, a religion, a scientific theory that depends on one core, unchanging idea to hold it together. So the structure has the core, structure has the essence, the structure has unchanging idea that hold the structure together. Derrida doesn't destroy structures. His intention is not to destroy structure. He just show us structures are built on shaky ground. His structures do not have strong foundation. The structures are built not on a solid rock. Imagine you are building a town. You place the town hall in the town, in the middle of that town. That is going to be the central place in the town. All the roads of that town point towards it, towards the central hall. And everything else, the houses, the park, the shops, gets its position based on where that town hall is. That center gives the whole model meaning. The center means that is the town hall, which is the central place in the town. That gives the whole model of that town meaning and order. In traditional thinking, philosophers, scientists have done the same thing with their ideas. They have put a center. For them, the center is God, truth, reason, human consciousness, human essence, experience at the heart of all their systems. So these different philosophers had different centers in their philosophy. This center organizes everything and gives it meaning. And it is believed to be solid and unshakable. Solid and unshakable. I quote, the center, what Derrida is saying. Derrida writes, the center is at the center of the totality. The center is at the center of the totality, and yet, since the center does not belong to the totality, is not part of the totality. The totality has its center elsewhere. So, in order to understand or in order to make sense of this, we have to stop thinking about physical center and start thinking about the center of meaning. In his essay, Structure, Sign and Play, Derrida explains that every system, language, culture, and philosophy needs a center to hold it together and give it stability. That is, center means that is the essence, the core, the most fundamental principle. However, that center usually has a special status. Center has a special status that exempts it from the rules of the system itself. The center is outside the system. but still it is the center of the system. This sounds very contradictory, antithetical, paradoxical. It's a kind of contradiction. So let us try to understand one by one. Let us break the definition into smaller parts. To make sense of this, we have to stop thinking about physical center and start thinking about center of meaning. The center is at the center, it is the anchor. In his essay Structure, Sign and Play, Derrida explains that every system, including language, culture, and philosophy, needs a center to hold it together and give it stability. However, that center usually has a special status that exempts it from the rules of the system itself. Here is the breakdown of that contradiction. The center is at the center, it is the anchor. It means that it organizes everything else. Center is at the center. It organizes everything. For example, it organizes everything else. For example, in solar system, the sun is the center that dictates the orbit of everything else. The center does not belong to totality. What does it mean? The center does not belong to totality. What does it mean? To be the anchor, the center must be fixed and unchanging. If the center were just another moving part of the system, it wouldn't be center. So it's not part of other planets. If we take, for example, the sun is fixed, unchanging. It does not move along with other planets. The center must be fixed and unchanging. If the center were just another moving part of the system, it wouldn't be the center. It would just be another piece. Therefore, it has to be beyond the system's rule. The totality has center elsewhere. The center is not part of the system, though it controls the system. The totality has its center elsewhere. Because the thing that gives the system meaning, the center, for example, because the thing that gives the system meaning, the center is fundamentally different from the system itself. The true point of origin is always just outside our reach. The true point of origin is always just outside our reach. If we try to understand the very concept or the fundamental argument Derrida is making, we can make it clear with example. Think about a legal system. The Constitution is the center of country's legal totality. It governs every law made. But what is the paradox? If the Constitution is the source of all legal authority, what gives the Constitution its authority? This is the question. It can't be a law. The authority of the systems comes from something outside the system. It is not in the Constitution, but the authority of the Constitution comes from something that is outside the Constitution. For example, natural rights or the will of the people. The authority comes from the people. The authority comes from the idea of natural rights, meaning the center of the legal totality is actually located elsewhere outside the system. It feels contradictory because it challenges our desire for presence. We want things to have a solid, reachable core. Derrida is arguing that the center is actually a function or a concept we create to keep the structure from collapsing rather than a physical thing inside the structure. He uses the term structurality of structure. He uses the term structurality of structure. What does it mean? It means the property of being a structure, attributes, the quality that makes it structure, the thing, what he calls the property. Structurality of structure means the property of being a structure that makes a structure a structure in the first place. It is the thing that makes philosophers focused on the center of structures. Philosophers focused on the center of structures like the idea of God, idea of truth, idea of reason, idea of essence, idea of consciousness, and forgot to look at the structure itself. They were so busy studying the town hall, for example, in the previous example. They never noticed the network of streets that make a town. It is not the hall that makes that town the town, but it is the network of streets, the houses, and many other things that make the town the town. The structurality of structure is the focus on that network, the relationships, the connections, the differences between all the parts. You try to understand the twist Derrida reveals. When you finally look closely at this structurality, the networkness, you realize the center is a problem. A true, pure network would have no special point controlling it. All points would be equal and connected. But our structures always have this fake, special point that is the center, like the hall in the town, that is supposed to be the outside the network, holding it together. So, the very thing that makes a structure possible is also what contradicts its nature as a free play network. The structures always have this fixed special point, that is the center. Center is a problem, he says, that is supposed to be outside the network, holding it together. So, the importance is not given to the network of the streets and the houses and other things in the town, but focus is placed upon the center, that is the town hall. And town hall not being part of the network but outside that network is also what contradicts its nature as a free play network. Now, the another term in the essay, another important term that we have in this essay is sign. Sign means both the thing. It is the concept as well as sound. Concept as well as sound. The sign is not stable name tag for a thing. This is arbitrary. Arbitrary. There is no natural relationship between the sign and concept. For the same idea, concept or object, there are different signs in different languages. So, sign is not a stable name tag for a thing. It's a bouncing ball in a never-ending game of reference. The meaning you get is always temporary, depending on context, and is never the final stop. Derrida, following linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, says it's not that simple. Derrida agrees that words don't have meaning by themselves, but only by difference. Derrida agrees that the words don't have meaning by themselves, but only by difference. Tree is tree because it is not free, not tree, and not bush. Meaning comes from this network of differences between words, not from a direct connection to the word. But he takes it further. He asks, where does the meaning, the signified, meaning is signified, where does the meaning itself come from? Isn't the idea of tree also defined by what it is not? Like, tree is not bush, tree is not shrub. So, the signified is itself just another signifier in a different disguise. This starts an endless chain. You look up a word in a dictionary, and its definition uses more words, whose definitions use even more words, and so on. Forever. Meaning is always deferred, pushed back to other words. So every signified becomes signifier. Every signified becomes signifier. And that signifier points towards signified, which in turn becomes signifier. So this chain is endless. Derrida combines difference and deferral into a new word, difference. This is French word. Derrida combines difference and deferral into new word, difference. It means meaning is never fully present in a single sign. So the basic argument is that the sign does not have transcendental signified, that is the final signified, because every signified ultimately turns into signifier, and that signifier that points to signified again turns into signifier, and this chain continues endlessly. Derrida's analysis of the sign develops directly from his critique of structure, following but radically revising Saussure's linguistics theory. Derrida accepts that meaning arises through difference rather than positive terms. That's true. However, he challenges what he sees as Saussure's residual logocentrism. So, logocentrism is the practice of privileging of speech over writing based on the supposed proximity of speaker to thought. The privileging of speech over writing, because in speech the speaker is present, so it has direct contact with the listeners. There is the close proximity between the speaker and the listener, which is absent in the writing. Derrida introduces his famous concept of the trace. The trace is not only the disappearance of origin, TRACE. The trace is not only the disappearance of origin, it means that the origin did not even disappear. This means that signs do not refer to pre-existing concepts but to other signs in an endless chain of signification. This is meaning. Now, after structure, structurality and sign, let us discuss play. We talked about center. Try to understand the very concept of center. Once you remove the solid center from a structure and accept that signs do not have fixed meanings, what is left? Play. For Derrida, play is the free movement, the instability, the openness within a system once its central anchor is gone. Once the center is gone. Derrida says there have been two ways thinkers respond to this discovery of play. Number one, some people are nostalgic. They mourn the loss of the center. They keep trying to find a new foundation. That is again center, like science, the unconscious, or the history. To stop the play and make everything certain and centered again. To stop the play and make everything certain and centered again. Another way is affirmation. One is nostalgic. It mourns, it laments the loss of center. But another way is very positive. And this is what Derrida favors. Instead of being sad, you celebrate the freedom and openness. You accept that there is no final ultimate truth to uncover. And this means creation. This means creation, interpretation, and thinking can be endlessly inventive. Thinking can be endlessly inventive. It's to uncertainty. Levi-Strauss, who is Levi-Strauss, a structuralist. Levi-Strauss is a structuralist anthropologist who wanted to uncover a hidden underlying truth or origin that is independent of the play of science. In other words, Levi-Strauss is looking for a deeper reality. He was looking for a deeper objective reality that exists beyond the way we represent it through language and science. Levi-Strauss seeks to decipher dreams of deciphering a truth or an origin which escapes play and the order of sign. So, this is the criticism of Derrida. He criticizes for this reason only. He criticizes Levi Strauss for this reason. Because Levi Strauss trying to escape the play and the order of the sign. Levi Strauss might study myth across cultures, aiming to uncover underlying structures like binary oppositions, raw, cooked, nature, culture. Derrida critiques this. Levi Strauss is seeking an origin or truth that is ultimately unattainable because it's always mediated by language and science. There is no getting outside the play of science pure to a pure objective truth because they are all mediated by language and science. Derrida talks about a shift in how we think about interpretation. The second interpretation is about embracing the play of the world, the endless interplay of science, meanings, and interpretations without looking for a fixed truth or origin. So it's joyful, active engagement with the world as a game of differences and interpretations rather than seeking an ultimate truth. I quote, "This second interpretation of interpretation to which I announced myself seeks itself in the writing of an epoch which must finally determine as Nietzschean affirmation, the joyful affirmation of the play of the world, without truth, without origin, offered to an active interpretation." So, like Nietzsche's idea of embracing life's chaos and creating one's own values without relying without relying on fixed truth. So, without truth, without origin, interpretation becomes an active creative process. Derrida's point is we should affirm this playfulness. We should affirm this playfulness of interpretation rather than trying to pin down fixed truths. This is the fundamental arguments Derrida is making. It can be summed up as Derrida challenges traditional notions of structure and meaning. Derrida challenges traditional notion of structure and meanings. Derrida questions the idea of a fixed central truth. Science refers to other science. Derrida says science refers to other science, creating endless play of meaning. There is no ultimate origin or end point to interpretation. Meaning is always delayed. Defer means delayed. In difference, we have seen difference, the French term means both defer and defer, delay. Meaning is always deferred, never fully present. Structure is decentered. Structure is decentered with no fixed center. Play of differences shapes meaning. Interpretation is active, creative, and endless. Embracing play and ambiguity opens up new interpretation. So, this is how we can sum up Derrida's essay, Structure, Science, and Play in the Discourse of Human Sciences. Thank you.